counties with local rules, they disallow clear cutting, they allow only selective logging. That might be a way to do it, but with all the more reason to be active in electoral politics. Anybody else? Thank you, John, for asking me about Green Diamond. Having to rush through this story, this is ever present. Green Diamond, east of Trinidad, that is one of the areas that Green Diamond wants to log. The more important story is, of course, the big picture, the 420,000 acres that Green Diamond owns. Their own internal science is saying that their projections under their habitat conservation plans for spotted owl and for salmonids are not holding up, that they're losing species. And this Green Diamond is now the big elephant in the room in terms of forestry in Humboldt County and in the Northwest. They own actually more than 25% of the standing volume or the standing acreage of redwood, in the entire redwood biome, and they are clear cutting the hell out of it. And they will tell you that it's we're doing it in a sensitive way, that this makes sense biologically, and it's really bullshit, and it's really bad bullshit. And they're eliminating spotted owls and salmonids. I talked to a fisheries biologist who looked at their HCP for salmonids, and they said that this is an extinction level. 1 to 2 reds per mile of stream on Green Diamond lands is an extinction level for coho in particular. So Green Diamond is not being reined in. They just got FSC certification, which is a real crime, and I think that is where a lot of the energy needs to go now. And then east of Trinidad, that's that's one of those small areas, but biologically, we're talking about a huge impact to this region just by the policies and the processes that Green Diamond is pursuing at the current time. I wanted to talk just a second, because I didn't bring it up in the presentation, but the Habitat Conservation Plan and the Sustained Yield Plan that were developed for Pacific Lumber under the Clinton administration, they were designed to do an end run around the ESA and serve still as somewhat of a prototype for habitat conservation plans to do that end run. Industry has been looking for ways to end run around the ESA for years, and they kind of got this tool now. That was a fraudulently designed HCP, SYP, 2 major lawsuits brought against it. Neither one prevailed, but the fraud was clear. Even Richard Wilson, the former head of CDF, sued Maxam over these. And so, but even if they weren't fraudulent, it's still a tool that industry is using to get around the strictures of the Endangered Species Act. And we saw it in the Klamath deal. I negotiated that deal for 2.5 years, and I watched as the Bush administration and PacifiCorp colluded to get around the Endangered Species Act using some of the same tools that were used in the Headwaters deal. So it's important to keep an eye on these policy changes.
I'd like you to say a few words about the future of this ecosystem in the big picture. I'm just thinking this is the most productive forest ecosystem in the world. It per acre grabs more carbon out of the sky than anywhere. And we're faced with climate change and the possibility of restoring this ecosystem, letting all those big trees grow back.
Thanks, that's really a great question. We hit on part of it in reining in Green Diamond, but what's the other side of it? You mentioned restoration. The restoration economy should be booming here. There should be millions and millions of dollars invested in restoration on the North Coast. Out-of-work timber workers or anybody should be able to get jobs in the restoration economy. There should be plenty of jobs in WPA type of economy. And not only would that bring back the forest into what could be very productive timberlands with light touch logging, which the city of Arcata seems to have perfected up here. I really can't say enough about that program. And so that's really a great start. When the Headwaters Fund, which is a whole nother part of this, gave $750,000 to promote Green Diamond and Humboldt Redwood Company Redwood, really, especially in the case of Green Diamond, really crappy products. Of course, it needs promotion, right? And that money should have gone to restoration.
Yeah.
Now, perhaps there aren't the restoration outfits that are applying for that, but the Headwaters Fund in particular needs to be pressured to put a lot of their money, and they're losing capital. It's not being invested wisely. That needs to be looked into. A lot of great people at Headwaters Fund. There are people on the board now who I admire and do great work. But there needs to be some pressure and some insights and some energy from outside to help turn the Headwaters Fund around. And really, the restoration economy is where where it's at in our ecosystem up here. We'll bring back the salmonids, the sensitive old growth dependent species over time, and really, I think, be a trendsetter, which Humboldt has been in a lot of ways in the North Coast for this type of thing. But it takes us all, and it's out there. The money's out there. There is money out there for restoration. Even though the economy doesn't look good, there are millions and millions of dollars out there for restoration. It just takes skilled people to find it and get it.
Could I add
And
one
apply
thing
it.
to that?
Yes.
The issue isn't the Headwaters Fund. The issue is the Economic Development Department for the county. They are who give the recommendations to the Headwaters Fund of where the money should go, and they are the ones, Jacques Devitt and company, are the ones who went to the Headwaters Fund and said $750,000 should go for these ridiculous ads to bolster, you know, big companies with their lousy revenue. So that's the issue.
Thank you for the clarification. That is very important.
I'm worried that climate change is going to be a cumulative impact along with all the logging, and we might lose our redwoods. What do you think of that?
Well, interestingly, Humboldt State scientists and UC Berkeley scientists teamed up with some backing by Save the Redwoods to look at climate change, and two key conclusions that they came to, and it's still preliminary, but they are looking at it, is that A, the trees are growing faster under climate change over the last few decades because it's warmer, but B, it's drying out. And they don't see this as a panacea. One of the scientists was quoted as, I can't remember the exact quote, but that we don't know, this really can't be maintained. And that with the drying out, with the loss of fog, the loss of rain, and with these small, really fragile ecosystems that are left, these are really small ecosystems, and they, you know, surrounded, especially by where there's green diamond land, by clear cuts, but also by developments, et cetera, that climate change could have a significant impact on existing redwoods. And I think that it's almost impossible to really predict. And the redwoods have survived climate change for millions of years, but it's been an intact ecosystem that's done it. So that's the difference. Nobody had ever cut it down before. So but you can find that study online. It came out last year. Save the Redwoods, Climate Change. Steve Sillett with Humboldt State was in on it, and a bunch of other great scientists. So it's worth looking at. It's an important question.
First of all, thank you so much. That was awesome. Second, you mentioned briefly the influence that Humboldt State as a university.
And your time.
I have microphone problems today. You mentioned briefly the role that Humboldt State as an institution may have had in supporting his efforts of logging here. So I wanted to share really briefly here a story of how this university has actually come to the defense of green diamond. So I'm finishing up my 4th semester here, and by the end of the 1st semester, I made it pretty clear that I was going to speak out loudly against the clear cutting of redwood forest. Around the end of the 2nd semester, I got a letter that I had to go to one of our 7 deans' offices here, and that I was impersonating an agent of the university. And I had no idea what the heck this was about, right? So I get to the dean's office, and they show me a letter that I wrote, and I CC'd Green Diamond, I CC'd Forest Stewardship Council, and some other folks who needed to hear what I had to say. And I was told that I was impersonating an agent of the school. So I had to change the letter on my signature on my email. I figured, who did this, right? So I had to do a public records request. It took a couple of months, but then I got a bunch of emails, most of them retracted, protected by lawyer-client confidentiality. But they were emails, 12 pages are what I got, and 12 pages withheld from Green Diamond to the administration of this school. And, you know, I didn't really find out anything from it because all the information, all the good stuff, the juicy stuff was retracted. But the bottom line is they're giving a lot of money to this campus. They don't want students speaking up. That maybe we're not cutting down the old giants anymore, but that's because they're not there. And what we are doing is crazy damaging, and they will silence even students who are speaking up. So thank you for mentioning that the university.
Anybody else? Yes, sorry.
Just in case it's reassuring about climate change, one little thing is my through our community. There's rather, I don't know how old they are, but they're pretty tall, pretty big redwood trees planted on the old homesteads. We've got 2 just on our little acre, and the neighbors have a couple. And that's hot, dry summers, relatively near the various creeks, and I don't know what the water table situation is, but, and then Hoopa has a native grove, a natural grove, that I think it's old grove. I only saw it once a really long time ago, and I think it's the farthest inland native grove in the county, maybe even the whole state, farthest inland, and that's hot, dry summers, and it's a ways up from the river, so I don't know, in terms of how much water it's actually getting in the summer. And there's mist on the river where we are in the summer, some mornings, but we don't have much coastal fog. Yeah, so there are redwoods who have adapted over time somehow to that kind of summer instead of the coastal summer. I just, in case that, if a scientist would like to do some study on that, and ours, the 2 on our acre, are productive. They make little seedlings